Welcome to episode 3 of the Data-Driven Tidbit for Teachers, which is aimed at helping teachers utilize depth of knowledge data to make your teaching more strategic. As teachers, the constant challenge is to be able to use Webb's depth of knowledge to increase rigor in instruction. For classroom teachers, the more important question is one of practice. How do we create rich environments where all students learn at a high level in our day-to-day activities? The first key concept that all educators have to wrap their head around is the idea that DOK levels are not sequential. It's not necessary to fully master content within level 1 tasks before attempting level 2 tasks. Perfection is an unrealistic goal for everyone, as we all know, and in fact, teachers often find that working with students in a small group type setting, that their students actually understand the concept, but tend to make silly mistakes from time to time. Instead of holding students back and putting too much focus on these minor mix-ups, teachers can begin teaching students how to process and scaffold DOK2 questions that may require multiple steps. In fact, the skill of recognizing multiple steps and being able to identify these steps is crucial to success and can be learned even if problem-solving errors occur in simple calculations. The other important idea for teachers to wrap their head around is the thought that DOK levels are not developmental. There is no age at which students are not capable of thinking deeper. However, what is cognitively complex task for a kindergartner may not be as complex for a middle school student. Teachers should evaluate the activities used for instructional purposes to see that all students have the opportunities to practice complex reasoning. So how does this factor into student performance on state testing? The Florida Department of Education releases a test design blueprint summary for each student given by the state. The breakdown for the ELA FSA assessments and Math FSA assessments is the same. 10 to 20% of the questions that the student will see will be at DOK Level 1. 60 to 80% of the questions that the student will see will be at DOK Level 2. And an additional 10 to 20% of the questions will be at DOK Level 3. This means that if a student sat to take Session 1 of the FSA test, and Session 1 contained approximately 40 questions, then perhaps 4 could be Level 1, 4 could be Level 3, and 32 questions on the FSA could be Level 2. Now obviously we don't know the exact breakdown of the questions on the FSA, but thinking about the breakdown of questions in this manner helps clarify why it's so important for our students to get exposure and become successful at DOK levels 2 and higher. Science and social science teachers can use the same information to be strategic. While the statewide science assessment and biology EOC have the same DOK breakdown as the ELA and math tests, the social science assessments have a slightly different distribution of cognitive complexity. This could be one of many reasons that explains why students are able to achieve satisfactory performance on the civics EOC and the U.S. history EOCs even if they're struggling on other FSA assessments. Now let's take a look at how impactful it can be for a student to be successful at DOK Level 2. And let's take a look at the two most influential reports that can be used to examine DOK2 performance. And by selecting the Student Item Analysis Report, teachers can identify the percentage of students who are experiencing success at each DOK level and even see which students need support. By selecting the Comparative Results Report, teachers can get a cumulative average of how students have performed at each DOK level so that their teachers and students can goal set and measure progress and really be strategic. To find your depth of knowledge level in Student Item Analysis, choose your test title. Your report will default to the Standards tab, which shows how your students have performed on each of the standards on a particular test. To navigate to the Depth of Knowledge tab, select the blue Depth of Knowledge tab located underneath the attribute column. The report will render to show the percent of students in your classes that are mastering the various depth of knowledge levels. To see the percentage of students who are mastering the levels and the percentage of students who are demonstrating partial success, simply select the yellow box to swatch in the threshold achievement band. By examining the percentage of students meeting threshold and above at each DOK level, teachers can determine if students are ready for more rigorous practice, set goals, and even strategically arrange groups. Let's first look at DOK 1 performance. In this teacher's class, 87.88% of the students are experiencing some success. This means that approximately 88% of the class understands the foundational level of skills being taught. Now, of course, 4 students are still needing support, but this teacher should increase the level of rigorous activities because the data shows that the students are ready. The goal should be to increase the DOK level 2 percentage to be within 10% of that DOK 1 level. This would involve working with students on scaffolding, processing, and so much more. Now, of course, not every teacher has a class that is performing as well as this one. However, remember the tidbit shared in the beginning of this video. The DOK levels do not require mastery before exposure and practice at the next level becomes valid. If the teacher had 50% of the students successful at DOK level 1, the teacher could still expose the students to how to process multi-step problems, as this skill is independent of the factual recall knowledge. Direct your attention to the percent of students column in the data table, and notice how all but 4 students are experiencing success at DOK level 1, but in DOK level 2 there are 14 students who are not successful. By selecting the red achievement band marked with a 14, your student item analysis report will filter to show just those students. After selecting the red achievement band with the 14, you'll notice that the band will now expand the entire width of the column. And when you scroll down, you'll notice that your report now contains only those 14 students. Now you're able to look for trends or patterns with regards to incorrect responses. Additionally, teachers can select the number of items to filter the report to show only those items for that group of students. Let's start with selecting the 5 in the number of items column. In this image, we have 14 students who were unsuccessful at DOK 2 and how they performed on the DOK 1 items. The teacher can now see the questions 6 and 8 are showing a trend of students missing this question with the same incorrect response. Now the teacher is able to quickly and strategically remediate and move on to DOK 2 with the same process. While student item analysis offers great insights as to the student's performance and the specific responses to each question type, the comparative results report and performance matters offers something that cannot be ascertained in any other report: a student listing with a cumulative average on DOK 2. To find depth of knowledge information in comparative results, simply choose a test in the text box first. Then scroll down to the Report By box located just underneath the test box and select the downward triangle to the right. Then toggle to the depth of knowledge. Upon selecting the depth of knowledge, a set of bar graphs will appear on the comparison chart. This allows teachers to set goals for each assessment for a 9-week period or a trimester, and so on. The next step would be to toggle to the Students layer to see a listing of the individual students. As we look at student averages, it's important to pay close attention to the averages for depth of knowledge level 2, as this comprises 60 to 80% of the FSA. As educators, we may be fortunate to end up with high-performing class, or we may be passionate about working with striving students. Regardless, it's less about what percentage they start with and more about what percentages they end up with by the end of the year. For example, a student with a 0% of DOK 2 questions correct may not be likely to end up being proficient on FSA, but if the student can make 20 to 30% gains in their ability to answer DOK 2 questions, then the student is more likely to make a learning gain according to the state. Each student can learn and grow in their ability to process the more rigorous questions. But if teachers are not tracking student performance in this area, how will they know if the student is truly progressing? Take a look at the 2 students accentuated by the purple box. In this example, both of these students are performing satisfactorily on the overall FSQ and USA score. But when looking at their DOK 2 performance, we notice that the students are mastering DOK 1, but definitely need improvement in DOK 2. Since DOK 2 is the majority of the FSA test, this explains how a student could do okay on your local assessments and earn a much lower FSA score than expected. If teachers don't set goals with students around improving these averages, we are missing the opportunities to help students make the learning gains that they need. Teachers could employ a DOK tracker to help students track growth in this area over time, and this type of data monitoring could help and give big returns on the investment. Teachers should also have students monitor their DOK performance after every test to measure progress. But it may also be valuable to track DOK performance over multiple assessments. By entering multiple tests into the comparative results report, teachers can get a more reliable average as there will be more items for each DOK level, making the percentages more statistically relevant. This concludes the data-driven teacher tidbit focusing on DOK. If you have questions or would like to discuss this topic further, the data reporting team is here to help you. Reach out to your EDW specialist and we will help you get started.